Hello everyone, I'm Chrix.
And I'm Curt.
And this is actually, we're doing this over the internet right now. We're talking through a program called Discord, which most of you know about Discord or Skype or programs like that. We're doing it through one of those, and this isn't necessarily a commentary. It's a discussion of, well, you can probably see the picture right here. It's a discussion of the Netflix series 13 Reasons Why, Season 1, because Season 2 hasn't come out yet, and we're probably just going to ignore it when it does. The story with this was, I watched it on Netflix, and I hadn't actually read the book or anything, so I watched it, and I really enjoyed it. Curt watched it, he had read the book, and he watched it. He had some of the same opinions as I did, he had some different opinions as I did. Either way you look at it, it's a good series.
Yeah, I actually read the book back before the show ever came out, before I even knew there was going to be a show. Like, there were rumors of movies, but I read it back in high school as either a junior or a sophomore. I can't remember. And it was a good book. It was a really good book. So when I what is it, like a 13-episode TV series?
Yeah.
I'm like, are they really going to stretch out the story like that?
It worked in some of the cases, I feel like. Which, some of it did feel like it had been a chapter of a book that had gotten stretched out.
Yeah.
But a lot of it did feel good, for the most part. In my opinion.
I think I still like the book better, though.
Well, yeah, of course. Everyone is going to have their preferred.
I don't know if everybody knows what this show is about yet, so should we, like, explain it to them?
We should probably clarify exactly what this is about. I could just look up the plot summary on Wikipedia, because Wikipedia is definitely a reliable source.
Yeah.
But basically it's about this girl. Well, it's not exactly about the girl, but it starts with a girl who commits suicide.
Yeah.
And after she commits suicide, this boy who was kind of in love with her finds this, or is mailed this box of 13 tapes that turn out to be the girl's tapes that she recorded, and they're the 13 reasons why she killed herself. And she's sending them to the people who caused her, or quote-unquote caused her to kill herself.
I mean, that's always going to be debatable. I know a lot of people think that these things were, that a lot of these reasons were trivial, but the most trivial of things can have a huge effect on somebody.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I know this is kind of a weird comparison, because I'm comparing, like, a tragedy story to a comedy story, literally, but, Back to the Future, we see how the littlest change in the timeline can have, like, a huge effect on future events.
Doesn't she, say that, too? She mentions the butterfly effect.
Something like that.
I know she talks about the butterfly effect in one of the episodes. I specifically remember it.
Like, I was reading a forum for somebody who wanted to make a fan edit if this is ever released on DVD or Blu-ray. They wanted to make a fan edit to make it into a movie, and they wanted to cut out some of the reasons because they seemed trivial. And I'm kind of thinking to myself, no, I'd actually keep in all 13 reasons, because it actually shows that the smallest of events can have a big effect on somebody's life.
I mean, like, I can understand their stance on it. I don't necessarily agree with it, but I can understand it. Like, some of them do seem trivial. Like, they're not necessarily things that the characters did wrong that should have caused her to kill herself. But with all of the stress that was going on around her, it's understandable why even the littlest of things would have had that big of an effect. Like, the girl, I can't remember her name. Was it Jenny? The stop sign one?
Yeah, Jenny in the book, Sherry in the show.
Yeah, Sherry was her name in the show, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Trying to find it. Funny story. Hannah Baker's mother is considered one of the main characters, but her father is not, even though he appears almost as often as she does.
Her parents aren't in the book at all. Because
really?
They actually moved out of town after she died.
Okay.
Actually, most of the book actually takes place in one night, because Clay listens to all the tapes in one night.
Mm-hmm, which is one of the big differences between the book and the series, is that
for some reason I find listening to them all in one night actually more poetic than the show's thing where he takes weeks to listen to all of them.
Right, in the show he takes weeks to listen to them because he can't bear to listen through all of them. In the book he does listen to them all in one night, which, again, that part, that much is kind of up to personal preference.
I don't know, I just find the way the book has it more poetic and even kind of darker, actually.
Alright,
because one of the ironic things is if the book were translated directly into a movie, it would be rated PG-13
and not
R. And not R, like the show is.
Quote unquote R.
Yeah.
It's technically TVMA because it's a show and not a movie, but same difference.
But at the same time, I still find the book darker despite the lower level of content.
Alright, well, I want to try to get the, general things out of the way before we go into, the major story spoilers. The smaller things, the things he listens to them all on different nights instead of all in one night. Those aren't really the big spoilers that I'm worried about. I want to get that kind of stuff out of the way before we go into the big spoilers and then give, a general opinion, watch it or don't watch it, and then we'll go on. Kind of
should we give a disclaimer right now that we don't actually support suicide and that we don't think that this show supports suicide or anything?
Well, yeah, the show doesn't support suicide, and we could talk about that, but it's kind of obvious that the show doesn't support suicide, in my opinion. I mean, it's about a girl who committed suicide, and all of the character, or not all of the, well,
it's treated like a really bad thing. It's treated like a bad thing in both the book and the show.
Yeah, it is treated like a terrible thing.
Yes.
I think the main issue that people had with it was when they looked at it, it seemed like Hannah was doing all this to try to punish the people, and that made her, heroic for committing suicide. I didn't see it that way at all.
I think the tapes were more for that purpose, because I think she was already planning on doing it without any revenge purpose anyway.
And then, I know a lot of people's... Actually, I'll get into that later, but there was a certain thing that they showed in the show in the last episode that people just really didn't like. Yeah. But we'll get into that later, because that's kind of a spoiler. But, yeah. I would say for you, would you recommend people to watch it, whether they've read the book or not? Would you recommend that people watch the series if they're at a good age to watch it?
Whether or not somebody's going to prefer the book over the show, I think somebody should at least watch the show at least once, but I recommend they read the book before they see the show. Okay.
But you do recommend the show then?
Yes.
Okay. I also recommend the show. I do enjoy the show. And I'm reading Wikipedia right now, the critical response section, which is usually fairly accurate. It does say that it received a lot of positive reviews, so I'm assuming that the majority of critics and everything feel the same way. So anyway, now that we've gotten those kinds of things out of the way, and now that we've given our recommendation, we're going to go into the spoiler territory, and we're kind of going to start from the beginning of the show and kind of just dig through to the end. I've got the plot summaries of all the episodes, so spoilers start now. If you haven't seen the show and you don't want it spoiled for you, don't watch beyond this. So, spoilers starting in 3, 2, 1. So, like we said, Clay Jensen, the main character, he finds the box. It has the 13 tapes, and he finds out they're from Hannah because he plays the tapes in his dad's boombox. But then the boombox breaks, so he steals his friend's Walkman and listens, which, I don't know. Considering, he steals his friend's Walkman, you know what I mean?
That was actually in the book as well, only his dad's boombox didn't break. He just needed to get out of the house because he didn't have enough privacy to listen on his dad's boombox. But they had to get rid of the boombox as quick as possible in the TV series because, of course, he doesn't listen to them all in one night in that. Right.
I mean, it's... I guess...
It was kind of like one plot point leading to another. They decided not to have him listen to all the tapes in one night. But in order to do that, they had to get rid of the boombox as soon as possible because otherwise it wouldn't make any sense why he didn't just use the boombox.
I don't know. It kind of paints Clay as like a not entirely innocent character from the start, which helps you wonder exactly what he did wrong because you know that he does do things wrong. He's not a completely innocent character, and really throughout the show, nobody's completely innocent.
No. Because he didn't try to figure out what was wrong with Hannah at the time when he sensed that something was wrong.
And I mean, like, even if they're not completely innocent, people sometimes, like, there are things that people in the show did by accident even, but, like, still not completely innocent, especially if they don't come out and admit it later on. The first episode, the tape subject, if I remember, it says it right here, Justin Foley, which I actually liked because, Curtis... You explained the difference between the series and the book here, and the way you explained it and the way I read about it, I actually do like the change that they made to this.
Yeah. I think they really only made one major change, and it's actually to update it to the modern times. They actually have him take an upskirt shot of Hannah with his mobile phone as she comes down the slide.
Right, and then share that, which kind of paints him as more of... Well, first of all, he doesn't necessarily share it with the whole school. He shows it to one of his friends, and then his friend gets a hold of the phone and shares it. But he's still not completely innocent.
He shouldn't have shown it to anybody, and he shouldn't have taken the picture in the first place.
Especially not Bryce Walker, which...
But in the book, it's just a story that goes around after he tells it. He doesn't take any pictures.
Which, honestly, if they're...
2007.
Right.
There's like a 10-year gap between the book and the movie.
Right,
so
and
there's a lot of updates in the show, not movie show.
And like, I don't mind them updating the time, especially if they can make changes like this to make it make sense in the time. Like, if they're gonna update the time and keep the story the same, then it wouldn't be as good to just have him spreading around a story as it would be to have like the mobile phone picture. It makes more sense with the time.
Yeah. And which order for the tapes? Should we go in the book's order or the show's order?
I would say go in the show's order just because we're running through the show and we can point out the things that are different.
Yeah.
So wait, in the book, which was the second tape, was it Alex or what? Or no, was it Jessica or was it? Or not the second tape, the second reason, I guess.
Still the second side.
Right, the second side. Tape 1, side B. Was it Alex or Jessica in the...
Some reasons that say that there were 13 tapes, but technically there aren't 13 tapes. There's 7 tapes, but there are 13 sides recorded.
Well, 6.5. But yeah.
Yeah.
That's why I say 13 Reasons, as well as the series being called 13 Reasons Why. I believe in the book the next character to be introduced as a reason was Alex, but in the series... They list Jessica there.
And I really don't see why they changed that.
I mean, it's not a bad change, it's just you don't understand why, right?
Yeah, I don't understand why they changed that order around. I actually think the original order made more sense the way it was in the book.
Maybe. I don't know. It introduced too many characters at that point is what I felt like. It introduced both Jessica and Alex in the same episode, but either way they were going to have to do that because you can't really introduce Alex without introducing Jessica anyway.
Yeah, so what happened was we'll just do Jessica's and Alex's at the same time because they run directly into each other. Well, technically all the tapes.
Right, and I don't exactly remember what happened with Jessica. Oh, wait. I do remember what happened with Jessica because it says right here.
What happened was Alex made that list of the best and worst, and he listed Hannah as best ass, basically.
Yeah, you just said it, but whatever.
Yeah, I know, but I mean, it's a quote, so.
Yeah. Okay. But anyway, Alex did that, and then Jessica got angry at Hannah because Alex broke up with her. And she thought that Hannah was the cause of it. So she blamed Hannah for it, and she slapped Hannah, and that broke up their friendship. Slapped. Oh, did she scratch her in the book?
Yes.
Oh, dang.
I think it stated that she had a scar under her eye for the rest of her life or something.
Oh, boy.
The rest of her short life.
Right. That's depressing.
Yeah.
Again, guys, keep in mind that this is from the mind of somebody who has read the book and somebody who hasn't read the book.
You're cutting out again.
I just said keep in mind this is from the mind of somebody who both has read the book and hasn't read the book.
Yeah, you haven't and I have.
Yeah, exactly. But anyway, yeah, those are the two reasons why Jessica and Alex become reasons for her killing herself.
Yeah. And so those are reasons 2 and 3. And then there's also the fact that there's a kid who Hannah doesn't actually name on the tapes, but this is actually one of the things that's better about the book, because the book isn't actually visual. And so
right, so you don't know exactly who the characters are.
Clay actually guesses who it is from the start, so we kind of have like a theory of who it is, and it actually does turn out to be true when we do find out later.
Mm-hmm.
But this kind of gets ruined in the show because we see who it is right away, unless we are actually seeing the way Clay is imagining it, which is actually a theory I have about the crumpled up note in the later episode, that we're actually seeing it the way Clay is imagining it. So maybe we'll get to that later.
That could be. That's a possibility, actually.
Yeah.
But anyway, yeah, those are the two, and again, that one person who grabs her and says that the list was right, which you find out who that was later, because Clay ends up being absolutely right about that person.
Actually, one of the things that they did in the show was they both had the colors saturated more during the flashback sequences, and also Clay has a scar on his head in the present, but in the past he doesn't.
Mm-hmm. Another thing to note about the series at this point is that it's not just focused on what happened to Hannah in the past, it's also focusing on what's happening to Clay in the present. So there's stuff like, it says here, and I'll just read it off of Wikipedia because I remember this point happening. As Justin tries to recuperate from his recent slump, Bryce strong-arms Clay and Alex into a drinking contest in an alleyway. You remember that?
I don't remember that, actually. It's been a while since I watched
because
it.
Bryce bought the wine bottles, and he made Clay drink a bunch, and then Tony came up, and he was wondering what Clay was doing with those kids.
Now, Tony, I have mixed feelings about.
Tony's role in the show was interesting.
He's much more mysterious in the book than he is in the show.
Right. You know pretty much right away who he is in the show. I think they tell you, like, at the very end of the first episode that he is the guy.
Yeah. He, like, only talks to Clay in 2 scenes in the book, because obviously the book is shorter than the show.
Right.
But, he's actually much more mysterious in the book.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I kind of had a theory that he actually knew about the tapes the entire time, but it was kind of one of those mysteries that was not going to be solved until later.
Right. Now, should we go on to the next episode then?
Oh, okay, what's next?
Tyler.
Yeah, Tyler. Okay, that creep.
My goodness. He's definitely a creep in the show, and he looks like a psycho, he acts like a psycho. Well, in the show especially, because, like, in a book you can really imagine the characters however you want. He's a very good actor for the show. They chose a good guy because he acts like some sort of psycho.
He's a photographer in both the book and the show, and he basically
stalks people.
He goes to Hannah's house for a bunch of nights and snaps pictures through her window of her sleeping.
And Hannah feels like that's happening. She's not entirely sure, so what she does is she invites her friend Courtney to her house. Courtney offers to help her find this guy. But then Courtney,
this is another thing that's different between the book and the show. In the book, they actually pretend that they're doing something a bit naughty, and they're not really doing it because they're trying to get Tyler to take pictures so that they can trick him and suddenly jump at the window and catch him in the act.
Whereas in the series, yeah.
I kind of think they made a few of the characters less sympathetic in the show.
I mean, I wouldn't necessarily say that they were doing anything like that. The way I saw it is that Courtney was taking advantage of Hannah at that point. Because Courtney is a lesbian in the show, so...
But not in the book.
Right.
That was made up for the show.
So it's a little bit like Courtney, first of all, is a jerk throughout the show. She really has no sympathy.
And in the book.
Okay. I don't know how much in the book they focus on the present time, so...
I might note that the actual ending to the book was actually written at the last minute, and that the original ending was supposed to reveal that Hannah was alive the entire time.
That kind of would have ruined the book, though, I feel like.
I honestly don't... I honestly like the she dies ending better, because it's...
Well, not like it better, but think it works better.
It works better, yeah.
I can't say I like the idea of the character dying better than I like the idea of the character living, but I can say it works better.
Yeah, it works better. It does.
But yeah, Tyler... And since we're on Tyler anyway, we should talk about the acting, since I kind of brought that up. The acting, for the most part, in the series is pretty good. There weren't really any standout, really great performances, in my opinion.
Yeah.
And the only really, standout, not very good performance, in my opinion, was Marcus, which a lot of people pointed out that Marcus's acting was just not good.
Yeah, it wasn't at all. It was weird. But fortunately, he doesn't actually have that many scenes in the show, so... Right.
But Tyler was one of the very good actors. Tyler was one of the characters who they got a really good actor for. Devin Druid is apparently his name.
Yeah.
But anyway, he takes a picture, he shares it among the school, and the school actually doesn't know who the two girls are, and that leads right into the story of Chloe, or Courtney. Why do I call her Chloe? I don't know.
Courtney.
Yeah. But it leads...
He makes up nasty rumors about Hannah.
Right.
People won't think she's the girl in the picture, basically.
Mm-hmm.
And this is in both the book and the show, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
Except the context of what they were doing in the picture was completely different between the book and the show.
Right, and of course that upsets Hannah quite a bit because the things that Courtney is saying about her aren't true.
Yes.
But, that covers up to tape 3, side A. Let me see. I'm seeing what else happened at this point in the series, what was happening in the present time. And apparently this was the time when, Alex and... what was his name? Justin. This is the point in the show when, Alex and Justin took Clay for a ride in their car, if you remember that part.
Yeah.
And then Alex got pulled over by the police officer who happens to be his father.
Mm-hmm.
Which, you don't know that much about the characters in the book, do you? Like, Alex's dad is a cop and things like that.
You don't really get the backstories of any of the characters. You do meet some of them in the book. Like, you do meet Marcus at one point in the book, but it's a short scene.
Right, I imagine it's the same scene where he meets Marcus in the series, where he's outside of Tyler's house.
Yes. That's exactly what it was.
Speaking of which, what happens in the series is, all of the characters who get the tapes and find out about Tyler throw rocks at his window, except for Clay, who takes a picture of him naked and sends it around the school.
Which I thought was really weird, because I thought the point of the show was not to take revenge, but whatever.
I don't know how to explain Clay's actions in the show. It was kind of weird. I mean, I understand it, but it's still upsetting. But anyway...
Maybe he hasn't quite learned not to bully people yet or something.
Right. But anyway, once we get to tape 3, side B, this is where Marcus comes in. Hannah goes out on a date for Valentine's Day. And she ends up getting Marcus. What were the dates called again?
Sky somewhere in here.
Who? Sky?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Because the cafe, I can't remember what the cafe was called.
Right, the cafe scene.
And this is actually a bit different because in the book, Clay meets Sky on a bus that he's taking a ride on to get to his next location, and she's like this socially awkward girl who kind of has a crush on Clay.
In the series, we don't really exactly know where he meets Sky because he's friends with her in the first episode already.
But in the show, Sky is a barista.
Right. She works at the cafe.
And I think that was actually a small reference to the book. Because in the book, when Clay goes to the cafe, he meets... The barista happens to be somebody that Clay knew in high school. And I thought that was actually going to be something that would be elaborated on later in the book, but after that it was just completely dropped. So, changing it so that Sky was the barista actually does work.
Mm-hmm. It's not a bad change. It works. Let me keep reading about this. But, anyway, Sky's a suicidal character, right? And it's very subtle in the book that she's a suicidal character, but in the series, there's one point where they kind of make it a lot less subtle. Yeah. Like, they show her arm.
There's little notes throughout the show, because we actually see Sky a lot more throughout the show, and we see her kind of doing some shady thing. But, I think in one of the final, like, not the final episode, but one of the final episodes, Clay finally figures out that she has, marks on her wrist.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Now, anyway, since we're talking... okay, we talked about Sky. Let's talk about Marcus again. Marcus, ends up going out on a date with Hannah. What is it that she gets,
It was a Valentine date thing. That was just for fun. It wasn't to be taken seriously.
But she takes it seriously, and she wants to go out on a date with him. He invites her out on a date. He invites her to a certain restaurant. And she sits there waiting for like 2 hours, and finally Marcus arrives with his group of friends.
Yeah, and Marcus tries to make a move on her, and she doesn't want that, because he's basically only doing it because...
He wants to show off.
He only went to see her because he thought the girl with the girl that was on the list would be there.
Mm-hmm.
That was on Alex's list,
mm-hmm.
basically.
He didn't really care about Hannah.
No,
and then once...
He just wanted to have his way with her.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And
so Hannah shoves him off and he leaves. And then this leads directly into the next tape, actually.
Because Zach Dempsey just comes up and sits by her and cares for her. And decides to pay the bill and everything,
And she's too depressed to really say anything nice to him. And he basically takes revenge.
Well, that's not exactly what happens in the series. What happens in the series is, she is too depressed to say anything to him, and he understands that. But then he comes to her like a day or two later to ask her to go out with him. And she turns him down.
I don't know if that was in the book, but... Yeah, basically what happened was... Once Zach saw that she was really depressed, he should have tried to figure out what was wrong. But instead, he does the most absurd thing possible and steals her notes in her favorite class.
Mm-hmm. The series makes a bit more sense in this context, I feel like, and makes the character a bit more understandable and relatable. What'd you say? Yeah.
You cut out for like...
Oh, sorry.
Seconds.
Sorry. I feel like it makes Zach more relatable what they do in the series, because, like, in the book, the way you described it is she doesn't say thank you or anything, so he gets angry at her, whereas in the series, it's like he understands when she doesn't say anything, but then later when he tries to continue being kind and ask her to go out, then she turns him down, and that's what gets him angry.
Yeah.
So...
He's depressed throughout, like, the entire flashback sequence.
Right. But anyway, he takes her notebook, right? And then somebody leaves a note.
he takes all of Hannah's notes that were actually helping her to feel better. And so she's, like, completely depressed now, and she leaves a note there for him and tries to catch him. He reads it, and according to her, or at least the way we see Clay imagining it from hearing her tape, he crumples it up, throws it away.
Yeah.
But
which, later we find out that that's not true, because Zach shows Clay that same note.
You cut out again.
I said later we find out that that's not entirely true, because Zach shows Clay that note.
Yeah. And there's a few theories. One theory is that Zach was crumpling up a different piece of paper. And one is that Zach did throw it away, but then he forged another one. And this is actually supported by the scene when Zach actually does show Clay the note. Some people have noted that it has different handwriting, but I'm more inclined to think that it's just a continuity error when he does that, and it has different handwriting.
Yeah.
Another one is that Zach decided to pick up the note again because he felt bad for doing it.
Mm-hmm.
And then another one is that it's just, like, Hannah might not have said that he threw the note away. She might have just said...
But Clay just imagined it that way.
Yeah.
Because Clay, we're seeing what he's seeing in his mind.
Yeah. And another one is that, I don't know about you, but sometimes when I'm telling a story, I get a few details wrong when I'm telling it because I'll, like, exaggerate a little bit. And I'm sure you do that sometimes, too. But maybe Zach did just crumple it up and not throw it away, but then Hannah added that he threw it away.
Mm-hmm. But anyway, what's happening...
When you're depressed, things can seem worse than they actually are.
Yeah.
You know?
Mm-hmm. What's happening at this point in the present, I know,
The problem with it is that it just creates more questions than answers, that scene, and it doesn't actually ever get answered what actually happened.
Right. I'm inclined to just believe that we're
basically only there to make Clay doubt the tapes, and I'm sure they could have figured out some better reason to make him doubt the tapes. I'm not sure what, but I'm sure they could have figured out some other reason for it. It's just kind of weird.
I feel like they want the audience to wonder. I feel like they don't want the audience to know, so they don't tell them.
The problem is it's just feeding the audience members who want to paint Hannah as a terrible liar and stuff.
Mm-hmm. But anyway, like I said, what's going on in the present day right now? This is when Alex gets into a fight with one of the jocks or whatever, or one of the mean kids.
Yeah.
And they go before the student council, but then the student council turns them away and says that Alex didn't instigate the fight, the other kid did, and that actually gets Alex angry because he wants to get in trouble for something, which we see Alex going into some sort of mental breakdown or something here, and we can tell that he feels bad about what he did to Hannah, even though, like, he's
already listens to the tapes because the tapes get passed down from person to person.
Right. Which, it's interesting because Alex is one of the characters that did, like, one of the least bad things, and he's one of the first people who we see truly feeling remorse for what he did.
Yeah.
So, and we see Alex's breakdown going on throughout the rest of the series, which I do like seeing that kind of stuff. I like seeing how the other characters are reacting to it, for the most part.
Yeah.
But anyway, after Zach, first of all, Clay keys Zach's car. He scratches the car up.
And Sky comes out and talks to him about how he could have done better than that or something. He should have, like, taken a baseball bat to the headlights or something.
Mm-hmm. Clay starts freaking out. This is when he sees Hannah in the hallway and he hears the tape playing over the loudspeakers and such.
Yeah, where he's hallucinating and stuff.
Mm-hmm. He's freaking out. He's super worried about it, and he's also wondering what his place is on the tapes. Alright, sorry.
Okay, go ahead.
But yeah, this is...
Sorry, I'm at college right now, and there's announcements on the loudspeaker all the time.
Right. Like I said, he's freaking out. He's wondering what his place on the tapes is. And with all that done, let's move to the next one, which is Ryan and the poem.
Yeah. I mean, Wasn't there like one point where, like, after he figured out about Zach still having the note, he decided not to listen to the rest of the tapes because he didn't know if he could believe anything that was on them?
Right, but that was when he heard the tapes play over the loudspeaker, because that's what Tony said he would do.
But
he
then
would show
that's
the
not
tapes
really
to everyone.
what it was. Clay just imagines it happening.
Right, Clay is freaking out.
And so he decides, he sees some kids getting bullied, and he, like, stands up for them and stuff, and actually ends up getting in big trouble with the school board for trying to do the right thing.
Mm-hmm.
And then he decides to listen to the rest of the tapes after having a talk with Tony, who we haven't really mentioned yet, but Tony is the one who owns the other set of tapes.
We mentioned Tony a little bit. We said we didn't know how we felt about him, but we haven't really clarified his position. Hello?
Yeah, you cut out for a minute.
Okay. Well, what I was saying is, we mentioned Tony, we just didn't clarify exactly who he was and what his role in the story is. But yeah, he is the owner of the other set.
Yeah.
Which the other set is, like, Hannah said that she had a second set of tapes that would be revealed to everyone if the person wasn't willing to go through with the deal.
And Tony is actually set on having everyone listen to the tapes in the order that they are on the tapes.
Right. Which he follows Clay around, especially because Clay is actually one of his friends.
Now, this isn't really done in the book, but in the show, it's actually implied that both Tony and Hannah might have had wrong motivations for the order that the tapes should go in.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and what should be done with them, whether they should be kept secret or not.
Right.
That's not really elaborated on in the book at all, but I think it actually made sense in the show.
It works. It's a good idea. But
We'll
anyway,
get into that later once we get towards the end.
The poem and Ryan, she joins this poetry club, and she finds out that one of the other students at her school goes to that poetry club, so she makes friends with him, and she starts writing poetry. She decides to share one of her poems with the group, and then her friend Ryan takes it, puts it into a magazine, and shares it with the world.
Her poem that she couldn't even figure out herself.
Yeah.
Basically.
Which we don't even know if that's the real meaning of the poem. He could have just made that up or something.
Well, he figures out the real meaning of her poem because she reads it, figures out the hidden meaning of it that she didn't even know herself, and she's, like, really touched by it and everything.
But then he shares it.
Shares the poem in, like, a gossip column of the newspaper.
Mm-hmm. And I mean, he does do it anonymously, but it's still very upsetting to her.
Yeah. He pretends like he found it sitting in, like, the bathroom stall in the garbage can or something.
Whereas he did not.
Yeah, he just outright stole it. He knew who it belonged to the whole time.
Mm-hmm.
And, this is probably the most trivial one of all of them. I guess some might argue Clay's tape. But this is probably a trivial one because it seems really out of place. But as I said, the most trivial of things can have a large effect on something.
You cut out again.
The most trivial of things can have a large effect on something.
Alright. Never mind, you didn't cut out. It just sounded like you had cut out because the sentence kind of ended abruptly.
Yeah.
The next one is kind of where I started getting... Well, I don't know what word I want to use, but this is where Justin Foley's second tape was.
Yes.
And this was...
In the book, it was actually Clay that was next. And should we do Clay next, since he's actually technically next chronologically?
Well, I want to do it in the order that the series did it in, and then we'll address what order the things came in the... You know what I mean?
Okay, Justin's tape, and Justin's second tape, technically. And, what happens is,
Justin, at this point, is dating Jessica, which is an important thing to note. And Justin is still friends with this kid named Bryce Walker. And what Justin does is, He's with Jessica. They're all at a big party. They're all really drunk.
And Justin and Jessica are in the. Is your voice still coming in?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay. Justin and Jessica are at the party, and they're in a bedroom. And Justin leaves for a few minutes, and while he's gone, Bryce goes in and attempts to rape Jessica. And in the book, Justin is actually less sympathetic because he doesn't actually try to stop Bryce at all.
Mm-hmm.
And so he tries to stop him, and then he gives up, which is still wrong.
Right. And I mean, you can see the remorse on his face. You can see that he feels bad about it. But like, it's very frustrating. And this isn't even something that was done to Hannah necessarily. It's just something that Hannah had to experience.
Yeah, and she feels bad that she didn't try to stop it herself. But honestly, if she had tried to stop it, it probably would have happened to her as well.
Right, which will, because
she's a girl.
Right. But you know what I'm saying.
Yeah.
It's because it's Bryce Walker, so it probably would have happened anyway. But it happens anyway, so.
Yeah.
But we'll get to that later.
And then,
the next tape is Sherry, who was named Jenny in the book, but who's named Sherry in the series for some reason. I'm assuming it was because they wanted to surprise anyone who had read the book. To make them think that, like, wait, who is this person? You know what I mean?
What she's feeling bad about and everything. And this is a change, not the name change, but the change that I simultaneously like and don't like at the same time in the show. Because basically the context is Jenny decided to drive Hannah home, and she ended up running into a stop sign and it fell down. And then she didn't call the police about it. So Hannah left the car, ran to a gas station to make a call to the police. But by that time, somebody had already missed the stop sign since it had fallen down and gotten into an accident and died.
Mm-hmm.
And the way they have it changed in the show is they actually... In the book, it was just a random person that died.
In the series, it's one of Clay's close friends, Will.
And the thing is, it's actually even worse because the police didn't actually know about the down stop sign. They thought the down stop sign happened during the car accident with Clay's friend. And so they believe that Clay's friend was probably drunk during it, even though he wasn't, because there's no signs that he was intoxicated or anything.
Right.
And I like this change, but it also doesn't make as much sense because I think Clay's friend would have driven along that street a bunch of times, so he would have known there was a stop sign there.
Right.
That there was a stop sign there.
Unless, like, he didn't drive down that road that often. I mean, like, it is a party, and they probably don't have those parties all the time. Who knows?
Yeah, I don't know. The random person makes more sense, but the being one of Clay's closest friends is probably a better plot.
It would make sense if we knew where Will lived.
Yeah.
Which it does kind of add a bit to, like, Clay's story, like Clay's actual relation to the story.
I mean,
speaking of...
I don't know if it would have worked as much in the book, because the point isn't so much that Clay's friend died in the book. The point is that somebody died because of what Jenny did.
Mm-hmm. Speaking of Clay's role in the story, the next tape is Clay's role in the story.
Yes.
Which I feel like Clay wasn't necessarily at fault here. Because...
I think his fault more comes not just from that one event, but from him never realizing it ever through all the times that he was with Hannah. Not just that one time.
Mm-hmm.
You know.
I suppose that could be.
Clay actually comes chronologically before Justin's second fault. Even in the show, even though his tape comes after.
Mm-hmm.
And in the book, Clay's tape actually comes the way it is chronologically.
Right. Which, This doesn't not work necessarily. I just don't know why they made the change other than to build tension up to Clay's
I think
story.
they might have wanted to prolong his tape longer, but then it ends up just veering off of the timeline weirdly. Once again, it's just one of those weird changes.
Mm-hmm.
But you either go chronologically or you don't. You don't just suddenly skip back a few events.
Right.
I'll say it happened at the same party, and he was trying to be friendly to Hannah.
They started.
It wasn't like him asking what was wrong or anything. It was more
genuinely being a friend.
Yeah, and
then it turned into something else.
Hannah was too depressed to do anything with him, so she said, "Just go away." And he went away, but he didn't ask her what was wrong, and that's what Hannah was sad about.
Right, which it's kind of different in the show, and because in the show he actually does ask her what's wrong, and he says several times that he wants to help, but then she screams.
You cut out.
Okay, I'll say it again. He does actually ask her what's wrong in the show. He does ask several times even, and she drops the F-bomb on him twice before he leaves.
Which isn't in the book at all.
Which, yeah, of course. But then
the
can't...
The language makes sense, because people do use that kind of language in high school, believe me.
Right.
I was in high school not too long ago.
And it makes it a lot harder to really disagree with Clay necessarily, or to see Clay's...
He does admit at the time that she kind of didn't really want to put him on the tapes because she knows that he didn't really technically do anything wrong, but she felt as if it wouldn't be fair to not put him on the tapes because she didn't want him to worry or something like that.
Mm-hmm. And I was honestly let me think about this. I can't remember what I was going to say now, actually. Yeah, I lost my train of thought. I don't remember what I was going to say.
Okay. And then we get to Bryce, and I think we can all agree that Bryce is the biggest jerk in the show.
Bryce needs to, go to jail or something.
Yeah.
I mean, he's raped 2 girls at this point. And by 2, I mean Jessica and Hannah, because he rapes Hannah in this episode.
Yeah, so Hannah attends a pool party at Bryce's house.
She says that it's the worst day of her life because of other things that go on with her parents. She loses some money on the street, and then you remember all that?
Which isn't in the book, but
so she goes off at night, super depressed, and she runs into this party. So she goes to it just to kind of cool down, relax, and then she gets raped.
She gets into the hot tub, and after everybody's out, Bryce rapes her. And this is actually different between the show and the book, because in the book, after a few minutes of saying no, Hannah just submits to it because she feels like a failure.
In the series, she does keep fighting it.
Yeah.
Which it does make her a stronger character, honestly.
It actually made her seem weaker in the show. It made it feel sadder that way.
Mm-hmm.
But also, the book is kind of sad in that respect too, because she's at the point where she doesn't even care what happens to her anymore.
They're both very, very depressing in different ways.
Yeah.
And then the last episode is probably the most controversial episode in the series. As I mentioned before, they show some things in this episode that people really didn't like.
And this is the last tape, which, according to the book, was always planned. And I assume when they were first filming this first few episodes of the series, that was how they originally planned to do it too. But in the last episode, they revealed that it was an afterthought after she had done the first 12 tapes, which doesn't really make any sense because she says 13 tapes on the very first tape. But,
Right. Maybe...
Yeah, it's got the same problems as the Harry Potter movies where they quote verbatim out of the book, even if it doesn't make sense in the context of the way they changed the scene.
Maybe she knew that Mr. Porter was going to be like that, and that's why she went in and recorded the conversation. Because she did record the conversation on her tape.
Yeah, so she goes in, And this is basically her last resort because she's like, if he can't help me, then nobody can. Basically. And he blows her off too. He realizes what's wrong with her. She doesn't outright say what's wrong with her, but he knows it, and he doesn't do anything about it.
Which, yeah, it's weird, especially because, like, in the series, Mr. Porter is actually a more remorseful character.
This is actually probably the most controversial episode, not just because of the scene we're going to mention later, but also because of the character Mr. Porter himself. Because I've heard people say that it makes school superintendents look bad because those people are there to help you.
Right, but I mean, that's not even a problem with the series necessarily. That's a problem with the book at that point.
I think that's actually kind of the point, though, of the series, because the point is that he wasn't doing his job like he was supposed to do.
Right.
Yeah.
At this point, Jessica goes home after that, and she decides to go through with the suicide. So then the show actually shows her, and this is probably the most controversial scene in the show. It shows her committing suicide by slitting her wrists.
Yeah, in the book, it stated that she took a handful of pills and drowned in the bathtub. After she passed out.
In the show, she slits her wrists.
In the show, she cuts herself.
Which actually kind of goes along with the complaint, because a lot of people, their main complaint about that scene was that it was like showing a tutorial for how to commit suicide if you wanted to. Which, I feel like, first of all, if they had done it with the pills, it would have been even more that, because pills are just take the pills.
Yeah.
A lot of people, even if they're going through, like, suicide, they don't want to, like, actually harm themselves, in a way, if that makes any sense.
So showing her cutting herself is actually, like, more gruesome, and it's actually more of something you're not going to want to do. But
right, in my opinion.
I don't know. Once again, the pills thing just seems more poetic to me. Similar to the one night, the whole listening to all the tapes in one night.
Right, I guess the pills versus wrists just kind of depends on your personal preference. Yeah, I prefer to slit her wrists.
I like both versions.
Right. When I say preference, I don't mean that I prefer to see her slit her wrists on the screen, guys.
Actually, you couldn't watch that scene when you watched it with me after.
Yeah, I couldn't watch the scene a second time. I had to look away from it. If you guys don't...
You didn't actually think it was going to be explicit. You thought the camera was going to cut away, and then it didn't. Right.
The way I am is I generally can't watch things with blood like that.
Yeah. Oh, you better not watch Passion of the Christ, then.
Yeah, I know. Stranger Things I actually can watch, but we'll talk about that at another point. We're probably going to do a Stranger Things review around Thanksgiving time, by the way, guys. Because I'm planning on getting Curtis to watch Season 1.
Maybe around Easter we should watch Passion of the Christ.
Yeah, maybe something like that. But, anyway, we've gone over most of the series. Is there anything else you'd like to go over, like, just in general, or big things? I feel like we've gone over a lot already, and this is kind of our discussion.
Basically, there's actually the ending here, and the ending of the show and the book are a little bit different.
First of all, there are a lot of things that happen with a lot of the characters. Alex commits suicide at this point.
In the book, Clay goes with the plan of giving the tapes to the next person, which is Jenny in the book. And it would be Bryce in the show, except he decides to veer off from the plan, and he comes up with a different plan, which Tony actually approves of with some urging, because he realizes that Clay's plan is better than Hannah's.
Which is, they make copies of the tapes and they put them on a flash drive, give those to Hannah's parents.
He records a confession from Bryce secretly on side 14.
Which it's arguable as to whether that's legal or illegal, or what the implications of that would be.
Even if it's illegal and not able to be used as evidence in court, do you really think the law is really going to ignore clear proof that it happened?
Exactly. The other part of it is even if he can't get in trouble with the law for it because it's illegal evidence, everybody's gonna know he did it then. And even if the tapes can't be used as evidence, Jessica has already admitted to her dad what happened. So Jessica would probably go to court and admit it and tell them what happened.
They also make an MP3 of all the tapes and give it to Hannah's parents, who didn't move out of town in the show.
They're still there, and they're trying to figure out what happened to their daughter and why she committed suicide. They believe it has something to do with the students at the school. Wow.
Yeah.
They're smart parents.
Yeah.
You remember what happens to Alex?
He gets shot in the head. We're not sure if somebody shot him or if he shot himself.
I'd assume that he shot himself. I'd assume that he attempted suicide because we see his mental breakdown throughout most of the season.
Yeah. I mean, it's a lot of in-depth, but there's also a theory that possibly Tyler shot him because Tyler is like
a psychopath at this point. We see Tyler with a bunch of like guns and such taking them to school. So
yeah,
Tyler has become a psychopath. Alex is either been shot by.
Didn't learn his lesson at all.
Tyler's just a psycho.
Yeah.
Bryce, we don't know what's going to happen to Bryce.
This happens at both the end of the book and the movie, but this is actually when he figures out that Skye is suicidal in the book, but not in the show. In the book, he sees her walking past in the hall and realizes that he shouldn't have just left her on the bus the night before because she was actually trying to talk to him and he was ignoring her.
Mm-hmm.
And he senses that she might be suicidal, and he hangs out with her, and that's the end. And in the show, he's already seen the wrist slashes at least a day before that. And so he goes up to her and says he wants to hang out with her.
And then invites her, and
it ends with them, like, driving off into
the distance.
The countryside. Yeah.
Somewhere.
Which legitimately feels like the ending to a story. It doesn't feel like a lead into
another season.
Yeah.
Which, do we even want to talk about season 2?
Just because I'm curious, but
what could they possibly do with this story? Is what I'm curious about.
I know.
I mean, I might not actually hate it. Even if I don't necessarily like it or don't think it should exist, I might not necessarily hate it.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's really what we have to say about this. And this video so far is less than an hour, so do you want to go ahead and end it here with final thoughts?
What did you say? You're cutting out.
I said, do you want to go ahead and give some final thoughts and then end here?
Yeah, sure. What's your final thoughts?
Well, my final thoughts are just like, it's a good show. It's mostly a good adaptation of the book. There are some changes that I disagree with.
Well, a good adaptation of a book that you haven't read. It's
right. Well, from what you told me.
I think you should read the book sometime, honestly.
I might sometime, but it's an okay series. I liked it. I'm probably not going to be able to watch it again just because of that last episode.
Yeah, you're traumatized, basically.
Yeah, but it was...
I'm more comfortable with that kind of stuff because I've watched a lot of gory movies and stuff. I have a better comfort level than you do, but...
So yeah, I would definitely recommend the show to at least ages 17 and up. Because, like, less than that, you're probably not appropriate aged.
I'd also recommend for people who haven't seen this show yet, try to find the book somewhere and read that, and then watch the show.
So do you have any other final thoughts, like summarizing or anything?
I thought it was pretty good. It's not going to beat out the book by any means, honestly. I wish someday we could see like a proper movie adaptation or something, but I know it's not going to happen because everybody's going to say they're remaking the show that way.
Mm-hmm.
It's the problem with Wizard of Oz, newer Wizard of Oz adaptations also. Everybody says they're remaking the film when they're not.
Yeah.
Yeah.
A lot of things are considered remakes nowadays.
But I mean, it would be cool to see a proper movie of the book. I might fan edit the show one of these days if I can ever get a copy of it. But
so yeah, I think that about does it for this discussion. So thank you guys for watching this, or listening in, I guess. Not technically watching, because there's not really much to watch here aside from this picture of clay.
Yeah. So I'm Curt.
And I'm Chrix, and we'll see you guys next time. Bye!
Bye.